So Ezra, you're here from the Phoenix Urban Health Collective, and you're here working with the Chicago Action Medical.
Correct.
Before we get into those two organizations, why did you come here and to work for NATO? Or I should say, maybe not for NATO, but for the people that are working to protest.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, you know, I've been doing activist work for a couple of years now, and you know, NATO is really the embodiment of a lot of what it is that I fight and I assist in the struggle for, or struggle against, really. And so I came to Chicago primarily because it is a big event, and we knew that there were going to be huge numbers of protesters here.
Yeah. And
as a medic, there was a call for medics and for medical support, and so I answered that call and came out.
Oh, nice. So when were you there? Were you there protesting since Thursday? Or how long have you been?
I got to town Tuesday night, and I started doing some work on Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah. You started doing some work already on Wednesday?
Yes.
And maybe you could talk a little bit about that, or?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Wednesday really, I wasn't on the streets at all.
Okay.
But what I was doing Wednesday was as part of the whole medical kind of support for the whole week.
Yeah.
We put together a number of things. So Wednesday was spent, a good chunk of time was actually spent getting some stuff together for what we call the health and safety training. And so we've been doing these health and safety trainings, which are basically kind of like Protester 101.
Okay.
It's the legal information, the medical information, and then some other things like police tactics and other just pieces of information that are really good for protesters to know. And so myself and one of the other medics put together a curriculum, and we taught that on Thursday and Friday, and yesterday as well. We've taught it throughout the week. So
you're over here, you're teaching people, prevention techniques, so that maybe, hopefully, you really don't have to go in there and go to work, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. You already had that on Wednesday. Were any of the days even more rough leading up to today? How was it? Was it was it a rising level of things? Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely been a steady escalation. I think what we've seen here is kind of classical, what we call, special national security events. And what we saw was that leading up until yesterday, really, there was a good bit of violence outside of the protests. And so we saw some raids and some people's homes being raided and people being arrested.
Right.
And that was happening, but for the most part in the streets, things were quite calm, and the police let us do it as we wish. I was in the streets several times, and it was really just quite civil. And there were really very, very few conflicts.
Okay.
However, yesterday, I think, being technically the first day of NATO, that's when it kind of switched. And we started seeing a lot more violence translate onto the streets. And so, there was a steady rise yesterday, and yesterday night it started to, the violence increased, and the police got a little bit more aggressive. And then as we've seen today, throughout the day, the police have been incredibly aggressive, and we've seen a great number of injuries today
that's
at the
unfortunate.
hands of police. Yeah.
So take me through, a medic's eyes, if you would, on today. So I'm assuming you all are marching, right, with the crowd, just in case anybody goes down or something like that. So, how do people even get a hold of you? Like how does that happen? And then once they do get a hold of you, what do you do? What's the steps that you take?
Well, first of all, today I wasn't personally in the streets. I was actually helping work some of the infrastructure and doing our dispatch.
Okay.
But in general, the way it works with a medic, and especially here at the NATO Action, is that we have a code of conduct. And so part of that code of conduct means that when you're marked as a medic, and this is how people find us, we're marked, we use red crosses. So people use either a patch from their own collective, or they use a red cross on their body. So oftentimes we'll use red duct tape or patches, and we'll make sure to mark ourselves pretty visibly. So usually one on the backpack, maybe one on the arms, something on the head, but we try to make ourselves pretty visible.
Okay.
And the way it works here is that medics run in pairs, so everybody has a buddy. So there's no medics who are working with the Chicago Action Medical that are running solo. So,
All right.
so what happens is you get with your buddy, you communicate, you make sure that you're both on the same page, and then you go out, and basically you're there as support. So the medics are not there to necessarily add to the march per se. They're not there to be politically, well, I shouldn't say politically active, but
that's not their primary concern.
their primary concern is the protesters. So
The protesters being the health of the protesters?
the health of the protesters, the health and the well-being of the protesters. And so,
so you know, they flag you down. They say, "Here, come here. We got somebody down."
Absolutely.
And somebody is down. You know, let's say, how do you even diagnose what's happened to them?
well, oftentimes, and this is where street medicine really splits from almost any other type of medicine. And primarily what we have to focus on first is managing a scene, because we're in a very chaotic scene.
Yeah.
As we saw, actually, a great example was last night. There was a gentleman who was hit by a police van, a paddy wagon. And he was down on the ground and he was in rough shape. And so what happened was there happened to be a lot of medics there. And so a couple medics started caring for that person, and they were able to create some space. And then the other medics, as well as enrolling some help from the crowd, created a safe space around them. They linked arms, they created space, they pushed other protesters back to create a safe space to provide treatment. Because the first thing a medic needs to do is to figure out exactly what's going on, a patient assessment. So they assess the patient, they make a quick, and it's usually got to be really quick, determination about how severe this situation is. Is it a bump to the head, or is it a possible spinal injury? And so we make a quick determination of that, and you create a treatment plan like that. And oftentimes what that includes is moving a person.
Wow.
Unless you can't move a person, we want to take that person out of a dangerous situation. So if it's a still active protest, we want to either create a space for them by linking arms, or we want to move them to the side to a place where it's more calm, and we can start establishing calm and some peace with it. And so after doing that, we would then, whatever is necessary, whether it be head trauma or whatever else, treat it to the best of our ability and in the order of most of things that are most crucial to get treated right there, and then either continue care at the wellness center, or perhaps be able to finish care on the street. Maybe it's just a nasty scrape, and we flush it out, put some antibiotic ointment on it, slap a Band-Aid, and you're good to go.
Ooh, nice.
Other times, perhaps we need to call an ambulance, and we then stay with that patient until the ambulance gets there, and that can get sometimes a little bit difficult.
What do you mean by difficult?
Well, we saw this today a little bit, in that even when treating somebody who's seriously injured, getting that person to an ambulance can be very difficult, because the ambulances are not allowed to go into an uncontrolled situation. They're not police. So the police have to allow the ambulances in. They have to say that the situation is contained or safe before that paramedic or that ambulance can come in and retrieve a patient. And so oftentimes that means moving the patient to the ambulance. And in cases where kettling or other police tactics are used, convincing police to allow us to leave that area can be very difficult. And so it can.
So there's some backbone. Is there any competition or any rivalry between Chicago street medics and for protests like this and paramedics, or is it pretty much you guys work together in unison and it's fine and everything's kosher?
I would say in general, from my experiences and from the experiences of my friends, we have a really good relationship with the paramedics and with the EMS personnel in the area. We do a job that, to be quite honest, they're simply not equipped to do. The paramedics and EMTs are not the ones who put themselves, really, I mean, what we do is we put ourselves kind of in a risky position to be able to be first responders to these protesters. And so that's not something that the paramedics do. So it's really almost, we work with each other. We're able to get to a patient, provide early on primary care, and then if necessary, we then turn that patient over to the paramedics and allow them to do their job.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
There was another organization out there today that it seems would have somewhat of the opposite purpose as Chicago Action Medical. I mean, it seems that it is that Chicago, Action Medical wants to make sure that the well-being of the protesters in good standing. But there was another organization out there, Bloc, right? Or perhaps an organization is not the correct word, more like a political tactic, right? Or a crowd tactic in a protest.
Right.
That was out there, and they seemed to serve a different purpose, and that not necessarily that they were trying to hurt protesters out there, but definitely the well-being was not first. It was a little bit more of a destructive philosophy. Can you tell me a little bit about that, and if you had any interactions with that type of situation?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so one of the things with so really medics are supposed to the best of their ability, try to remain neutral. And part of that is we don't make judgments on choices of tactics. From a personal stance, I believe in a diversity of tactics, and whatever your tactic is that you believe is most effective in the struggle, then I'm all for it.
Okay.
My primary role is to protect people that get hurt and treat them. And so, as a medic, I am there, and if the Black Bloc's doing as they wish, that's totally fine, and I'm not going to stop them because it's not part of my role. If somebody on the Black Bloc gets hurt, I will treat them.
Of course.
And in the same way, and this isn't something that's necessarily held by all medics, but I see myself as in a position to treat anybody who gets hurt on the street that needs my care, whether that be a protester, somebody in a Black Bloc, or a policeman. I have a lot of qualms with police, but at the same time, if they need medical treatment and I'm there, I see it as my duty to provide that medical treatment.
Nice. Ezra, if you could tell me a little bit about these couple of organizations that you're a part of. The Phoenix Urban Health Collective, PUHC, out there in Arizona. Tell me a little bit about PUHC.
Well, PUHC is a really excellent organization. We've been around for a couple years now, and I joined up with them about 2 years ago and did a training with them to learn about how to be a street medic. And PUHC really they provide a variety of services to the community. And so really it's split into two main services, one being similar to what we're doing here at the NATO protests. And in Arizona we have quite a bit of political turmoil, and we do have frequent political actions and direct actions against some of the political injustices and the oppressions going on. And so the Phoenix Urban Health Collective serves as street medics at many of those actions. So we'll go out and we do the exact same thing that we're doing here at NATO, just it's a much larger, smaller scale. The other side of what we do is really looking at the urban health side of it, and that is doing clinic work, doing community education, working at health fairs, providing services to the community, and oftentimes really what that looks like is establishing really firm relationships with community members, so that when say an undocumented person needs medical care, but they're afraid to go to the hospital because in Arizona a lot of hospitals, parts of the hospital are mandatory reporters, and so they don't want to get deported and leave their family here, but say they broke their arm, right? Then we provide a resource in the community that they can reach out to, and we have a trusting, well-established relationship that they feel comfortable asking us for help.
You gestured to your arm.
Yes.
I hate to think that this happened, over this weekend, or anything like that. But if it did, if you could tell me a little bit more about what happened to your arm.
Well, we see here we have some medical work.
Is this Chicago Action Medical working on you, or is this phase two?
This is the emergency room working on me right here.
You mean you guys don't carry a stretcher with you?
We don't carry a stretcher, though. Backboards are something that would be really useful in the streets if they weren't so big. But no, this actually happened yesterday. I was at a protest, and we had plenty of medics working, and so I was not marked as a medic, but was simply doing photography work.
Okay.
And we were marching the streets, and at one point there was a police line established, and the police began using their bicycles as battery weapons.
Wow.
And so they began picking them up and hitting protesters with them, and it got a little bit crazy. And so I came in to try to take some pictures of these cops hitting protesters with their bikes. When I did that, there was a large group of protesters behind me, and I was right on the police line taking the pictures. There was a big push, and cops started falling down, bicycles started falling over, and I fell down to the ground. And once I hit the ground, I had my camera, I had my hands up the entire time, and I hit the ground, and I was on the ground, I was making eye contact with people, saying, you know, I'm trying to get out of here, I'm trying to get out of here, and some of the officers decided it was still necessary to hit me with a baton, and so they started swinging and hit me in the forearm, broke my ulna, so I've got a broken forearm, and hit me several times on the leg and left some welts on my back.
Wow.
So.
Would it be too vulgar to ask you to show the welts?
No, absolutely not.
I'm
happy to
can
show
I help you? Just you know, for camera purposes, you can see the welts.
So.
Can we just make sure that these are in here?
We'll take a view.
Wow, that is pretty.
So this is healed up a little bit from yesterday.
Okay, that's from a baton.
That's from a baton, and there were several others that have healed up pretty good.
Good.
On the lower back, but this is
All
this
right.
is the big major one.
Cool. Put your back away. Turn on some of the female viewers
Yeah.
out there. Maybe some of the male viewers too. Shit.
Yeah. So yeah, and then I got some other ones. Actually, my legs. I got the legs pretty good. I'm pretty sore today. So.
Damn, man. I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad that you're here to tell your story.
Absolutely.
And you look in good shape. You know. It looks almost like you're half cyborg, just a little bit, and you're like, you're ready to like.
I mean, one thing, it really does cut down on the tweeting.
That's right.
It slows down those Twitter fingers.
I think I'm gonna say that like maybe you did it maybe you broke your arm on purpose just so that you didn't have. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
But you know what? What was really great was that although it did take me off the streets, and that's one of the things I struggle with most. I really hate it when I get taken off the streets. I sometimes look at it as a loss. It's happened before, whether you get arrested or you get injured.
Right.
But I got the opportunity today. I got to work with dispatch, and I learned a whole other side of it. You know, even though I wasn't on the streets once today, I feel without a doubt that I was an intimate and crucial part of the action, and I feel like I was able to really contribute to the struggle. And so I think that was a really good healing process for me today, and that's why I'm in much better spirits now than I was this morning. So.
Well, thank you, Ezra Kaplan, from PUHC, Phoenix Urban Health Collective, joining the Chicago Action Medical and the protesters of NATO here on May 20th, 2012. I wish you good luck.
Thank you very much.
And have a good night.
Thank you. I will.
All right.
All right.